All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. I hope you all are doing well. I'm Afil, your host for Google Cloud Study Gems, and today marks your second session. I hope everyone is eager to delve into the topic of generative AI, which is our primary focus for today. So, without further ado, let's begin. So, let's have a look at the agenda. First up, we'll do a quick recap from our previous live session. Next, we'll look into accessing the walkthroughs that were shared with all of you last week, in case some of you are still confused. Then I'll quickly demonstrate how to access the Gen AI pathway and then the structure of the course. We'll cover some of the major topics in Gen AI that will give you a good understanding of what the pathway has to offer and what the labs specifically have to offer. And finally, we can address any doubts or clarifications that you may have from previous week or even from this session. So let's begin with a recap of the previous live session. It was held on 4th October. The main idea of this session was to get started with the Study Gems program. So, we started off by redeeming the access codes for the GCCF pathway. We left the Gen AI pathway untouched. Then we discussed some important schedules and deadlines. I hope you guys are still aware of those schedules and deadlines. We also discuss the different kinds of assistance that we have in place over Discord and WhatsApp for you guys. And then this was followed by getting well acquainted with the cloud computing and some of the Google's offerings in terms of cloud computing. And moreover, we also set some weekly goals for ourselves, getting started with activities 1, 2, 5, and 6, right, all under the GCCF pathway. So for this session, let's quickly get started with a quick demo on how we can access those walkthroughs. So please give me a moment while I make sure my screen is visible. Okay. So I have logged in with my participant Google account here for the Study Gems program, and I see that I've received some notifications here, right? That some folders, Google Drive folders, have been shared with me. So let's open up one of these folders. Let's open up this mail and then open the folders. So if you notice in these folders, you will find the video recordings of the walkthroughs. So you can access these walkthroughs from these folders from last week's goals. Based on last week's goals we shared for activity 1, 2, 5, and 6, right? Also, let me show you for activity 5. Yes. So there are some, if there are, any sort of resources that you might need in order to complete any of those labs from these walkthroughs, we've also shared those here. So, and we've described how you can use them in those walkthroughs. So if any of you still don't have those mails received on your participant account, or you don't have access to these folders, or somehow it's been revoked, then please reach out to us as soon as possible. This it's a single video, these are recordings, but they'll cover all the labs based on those activities, right? So I hope this walkthroughs will help you complete the last week's labs. In case you get stuck or you haven't started yet, so you can look into these walkthroughs and then just follow up and get your labs and the activities done. Also, I've noticed that some participants still haven't registered under the GCCF pathway. So let me quickly remind you that the deadline for redeeming the access codes for GCCF and now generative AI as well is October 14th, right? So this deadline was shared in the previous session in case you are not aware. So please register, please remind your friends to register. Okay. Okay, with that, we'll so let's begin today's session with the the redeeming of the access codes for Gen AI. So make sure you follow the process step by step and all in chronological order. In case you're confused or you're not able to catch up with me now, so wait for the recordings to be out, and then you can follow those. Right? There's also a link, I believe, in or to the tutorial embedded inside the mail itself, the enrollment mail. Right? So the mail with the access code. So there should be a link there as well, in case you need to see it. So okay, let's get started with the demo. Okay, so I'm back to my participant account, and I'll open up the enrollment mail. So we didn't come across any participants with any issues so far. So I'm guessing everyone has received this mail. It was sent on the 3rd of October. So now let's begin with the generative AI arcade game, right? So all we have to go do is click on this button and make sure you do this entire process in an incognito window. So I've already logged in, as you can see, with my participant ID. You can do the same. Okay. So this is the level 3 Gen AI prompt engineering. So basically it's a pathway, but it consists of, it's more of an activity where you have 3 sections and you've got 8 labs, and the last section is optional. So you need to complete both of these sections. That is the 9 labs in order to complete the pathway. There is no other labs that you need to cover in order to complete the Gen AI pathway. So let's start by redeeming those access codes. I'll click on this button here. Okay, just give me a second. Ideally, it should have asked me for a code. A lot of participants from other chapters as well have faced this issue where they do not get the option to enter the code. Okay, anyway, I'll try to sign in. Okay, okay. So in this case, it's slightly different as compared to the GCCF. You first have to sign in, and then it shows this pop-up where you have to enter the access code. Copy my access code, make sure there's no white spaces here and there. Go ahead and paste the code. Okay, you can see there's a prompt saying that I've joined the level 3 Gen AI prompt engineering pathway. Okay, you can enter some player name. You can also choose an avatar and hit on submit. So the player setup is complete. Okay, you will already see the monthly subscription here, and that way you have redeemed the access codes, and now you have the access to these codes. So you can see there's 2 sections here. You'll get to see the leaderboard section, and then there's the overview section. Here are the labs. These are the 9 labs that you have to cover. They're slightly lengthier, but if you follow the instructions inside the lab, it should be good enough. In case you're stuck, once again, we'll be rolling out the walkthroughs by the end of this week, so you can follow those as well. So, with that, I think we have completed the first stage, that is getting the access into the pathway. Let's go back to the slides now. All right. So before we, get started with all the concepts of generative AI, let's set some goals for, this week as well, just like we did for last week. So for this week, once again, you have to redeem the access code. You can and you have to complete the 9 labs under Gen AI. These are the only nine labs, once again, right, that you need to perform in order to complete the Gen AI pathway for study gems. Once all of that is done, you can either complete the labs from last week or go ahead with other activities under the GCCF pathway if you're already done with last week's tasks. Although I would mention that the deadline for Gen AI is 30th of October, so it's not like you have to complete by 14th of October, right? So you have time, but you can get started with it this week itself. But please make sure that you redeem before 14th October. So there are slots allotted to every chapter, and our chapter is slot allotted this week. So we have to get the access this week. And in case you fail to get the access, then all your work under the GCCF pathway is just gone, right? Apart from the learning, obviously. So that is that. Okay. So now let's begin with generative AI. Okay. So before we begin, I'd like to hear what all AI tools you guys use besides ChatGPT. So let's try to keep this session interactive. Okay. I would like to, just type it in the chat. What all tools do you use? What all AI tools do you use besides ChatGPT? Let's see who's the first one. Okay, great. I see Nikhil Kumar saying Bard. It's great. So Nikhil has been using Bard as well. So anybody else? Okay, Pentium. Okay, even I'm not aware of this tool. Maybe you can let me know more about it. Junaid. Okay, Bing. Okay. So Bing has also incorporated AI and you've been using that. All right. Okay. Okay. So I have another quick question. Let's see who gets this one. So, what does Chat GPT, or rather, the GPT stand for? Let's see who's the first one. Please do not Google the answers. Anybody? If you know this, if you know what the full form stands for, if you're aware of the terms in the full form, then I think you already have, you know, uh, to get started with generative AI, you have the basic idea of what it's all about. Either you guys are really honest or okay, I see Nikhil Kumar saying generative pre-trained transformer. Okay, that's correct. All right. So before we understand what generative AI is all about, we'll have to dig a little into the past. Okay, he says source Google. Amazing. Great, Nikhil. So just like the steam power, electricity, and the IT revolution that have taken place in the past, we now have the AI revolution. Okay, and we are right in the middle of all this today, right? So it's changing everything, and it's all because of different things coming together. Actually, just think about it. First, we've got this crazy amount of data lying around, right? Like an ocean full of data, right? And then there is also the progress in terms of computing power and all those fancy modern algorithms that you see. We also have the tech giants like Google, Amazon, Nvidia that are pouring so many dollars into the development of AI. They are the ones making all of this happen at a unprecedented rate. And most importantly, you've got the consumers, us, right? So consumers like us are the ones demanding for AI and in our lives. So, every single day we want our work to be done, in some automated form, right? So, and we are getting it, obviously. So can we not say that this is a global effort? Like people from different corners of the world are all working together, either directly or indirectly. And so we are all contributing to this revolution. So like that's about the AI revolution, right? And why it's like triggered. All of a sudden we've noticed the growth, right? So what about the topic of today's session is generative AI. So let's say we've got the AI part covered for now. What about the generative part? In order to understand, like, we need to look into the evolution of the technology that's been running behind it for quite some time now, and that is natural language processing, for NLP, right? So NLP revolution. So initially, NLP was, all about classification. Things like, is this document an invoice? Is the sentiment in a particular sentence positive, right? So, but then came extraction. It's more of, what's the noun in this sentence? What's the premium amount in the invoice? What's a particular date that you see in some document? Then we also had matching and mapping. So for example, do two given sentences have the same meaning? Like, do they have the same connotation? And is the invoice vendor recognized, right? And so on. So this was all about matching, mapping, extraction, classification, right? And then we had the slightly more modern advancements, that is transformation and generation. So transformation and generation, right, is transformation, firstly. So transformation is, for example, translating a particular text to a, let's say, a different language, or summarizing a particular document. Okay. And then generation is like making that summary sound either more introductory or conclusive, right? Or something like writing an essay or writing some lines of code, and so on, right? The use cases are definitely endless. So this is how we've ended up with generation, and moreover generative AI, right? So also, the Gen AI revolution isn't something that has taken place overnight. It's been quite some time now, right? Since Google released the Transformer in 2017. But ask yourself, why? Why has it taken so long? Why do you guys think it has taken so long? Right? Is it only because the obviously the technology and the advancement take time, or is there some other reason? See, sometimes the technology may be ready to use, right? But there is a certain way in which the technology is introduced to the general public. We, have to ensure that we have to ensure certain safeguards against a lot of things that can happen. In fact, there may be even more cutting edge technologies at these organizations, including Google. But we have to be patient in the way we understand, their use. You don't want some new tech to rupture all the existing systems that are already in place and then suddenly break the economy or something like that, right? So keeping all these things in mind, we can then begin to understand, generative AI and so on. So there's also something known as responsible AI. So there's a lot of things that come into place. You have upon, beyond the concepts, the technical aspects of things. So okay, I see something in the chat. It was also never the first engine. Okay, that is right. Yes, but Google's contribution is definitely significant. All right, so let's begin by asking ourselves, what large language model, or LLM is, right? See, focus on the words large and language. We have some basic idea of what a model is from, traditional machine learning, right? So let's have a look at this. Initially, we had traditional programming, which was very deterministic in nature. The machine performed some task based on some program that was hard coded into it, right? So obviously there is the concept of memory here, but what about learning, right? So in order to incorporate learning, in order to imitate the human brain, we had the arrival of neural networks, which would perform, tasks like classification, prediction, okay, of something known as labels, right? So but then again, there comes the question of why restrict ourselves to labels. Humans can memorize, surely, they can learn, but at the same time, they can also express. And this is where large language models come into the picture. Now, these models have the ability to express and explain how they arrive at those labels, right? So basically, this is how we've progressed from traditional programming, then the neural networks, and finally the generative language models or large language models. Okay, so here are some formal definitions that you should be aware of. So let's just go through them. So a generative model is a machine learning model that produces content, including language, code, all sorts of media, imagery, music, and so on. And large language models are really good at understanding and generating human language, right? So large refers to both the size as well as the complexity of the network itself, and as well as the size of the data set it was trained on. So large simply doesn't mean that it was fed a lot of training data, and that's why the model is performing so well. It's also the complexity of the network. And then you have something known as transformer. Now this is slightly more complicated, but basically it's a neural network architecture, which is, it is the underlying architecture for most of the generative models that are published, by Google. So and it was published by Google in 2017. So transformer was introduced in 2017, and it has formed like a foundation in the growth of these generative models. Okay. So, I just mentioned like these models, the large language models are the ones that understand human language. So, let's have a look at how it works, like at a very abstract level. So, basically, the way the language model work is that they try to predict what's coming next, and not like it's some doing some searching or web scraping, right? Obviously, how it does it and how it knows the context, all of these things help, but at a higher level, this is what it is doing. Whatever you type, it tries to complete. So for instance, here you have an input. Okay, honesty is the best dash, right? Which one do you think it will generate? Okay, let's have some comments. Which one do you guys think it will generate? Honesty is the best dash. Okay, I see policy. I see people saying policy. Why policy? Why not the words way or approach? Please don't say it's the most likely next word. Like that's literally on the screen. Okay. Um, okay. Data is already fed in it. All right. Surely, but don't you think there has been instances in history where people may have used honesty is the best way or honesty is the best approach, and perhaps even that data has been fed into it? But why policy? Okay, it's the most appeared word in that sentence. It has learned the same. Okay. See, the model has been trained on a very large data set. That's true. What's also true is that, like I mentioned, it has come into scenarios where you have honesty is the best policy, honesty is the best way, or honesty is the best approach. It also know, like you can see on the screen, it also knows some probability, right, that is associated with these words. Say policy has come in 50% of the cases. That's why it's the most likely next word. Way has may become 20% in 20% of the cases, and so on. But again, why should it take the most probable answer? Let's say you want to create a humorous poem, like a really funny poem. In that case, do you think it will still say policy? Especially this question is to those who, you know, said policy. What do you think? Yes, maybe no, might not. Okay, no, great. Okay, so why no? Did you notice I did something there, right? So I said I want a humorous or a really funny poem. What did I do there? Context change. Okay. Okay, great. Yeah. So see, am I not giving the model some hints, some sort of parameters? Like somehow I'm trying to nudge the model with some context, right? So you're playing with what is termed as in technically what is termed as temperature, and the top P approach, the top K approach. There's all these things that are there. So basically, it boils down to context change. Okay, so you get the basic idea, right? So it's not so the basic idea that you should be aware of, that is not a search engine. Neither is it scraping webs in real time. You've probably seen it saying that it has been trained on data up till some point in time, and that it cannot generate data that has been generated after that, right? It cannot give you information based on those events. So that's the basic idea here, is that it is trying to complete. So next up, you need to know about two other terms as well. These are, prompt and prompt design. So what is a prompt? Prompt is basically any message that you feed to your model, right? Any sort of input that you might enter for the model to respond to any query, right? Any opinion. And prompt design is like the art and science of figuring out what the text, what kind of text, in which way the text should be framed, so to feed your language model, so that it get so you know to so that it generates the results that you want. So that is known as prompt design. And in this prompt design, you have basically different prompting techniques. So there is something known as the zero shot. For example, let's say I open up some AI and I say, write a poem about ants. Okay, what will the model do? It will get maybe creative and it will generate something for you, right? So and then so this is zero shot, is basically where you're giving almost no context at all. So in this case, the model will try to get creative or maybe randomly it will generate some kind of a poem for you. It may not follow any specific style. It may randomly pick any style and generate, right? You also have few short where you give a little context, right? So prompting something like, convert this phrase from English to French, and then, you send your input, right? Another example could be, you to convert a line of code from Python to JS, JavaScript, right? So notice that it's the same model that is writing a poem in the first place, performing translations from between different languages, and also converting code. Did we train it to do any of these specific tasks like we do in traditional machine learning? No, absolutely not. There is another technique known as a dialogue. So what is this? Here we prompt the model enough, we prompt it enough so that it thinks in a particular way. I know the word thinks is definitely not the best word here, but you get the point, right? So this, I believe many of us must be doing to get our daily productivity tasks done. Okay, but even in this case you should be aware of something, right? We can we be sure that whatever the response that is being generated, even if we give it a perfect dialogue, do you think that information or that response which is generated will always be accurate? What do you guys feel? No. Okay, errors will be there, inaccuracies basically. Okay. Okay, so we can say that prompt design is definitely something that we all should learn, right? But at the same time, it's also very tricky, right? So, and that is why probably you might have seen like there are so many new online courses coming up to learn prompt engineering, prompt design, get started with Chat GPT and so on. And here's this viral tweet from one of the founding members of OpenAI that says the hottest new programming language is English, right? So that's also it's also a new field that's coming up from design, but you need to also understand the architecture, the technology behind that is the large language models, right? So continuing with this, we also have what is known as decoding strategies. These decoding strategies are what is employed in large language models. So for instance, if you have this input that says the sky was full of dash, and you have these words known as tokens, right? They are called tokens, that the model can return along with their probabilities. So you've got the tokens and you've got some probabilities associated with each token, and the model can, for example, let's assume the model can only return these one some of these or one of these tokens. Now which token should the model return? This is what is decided by these decoding strategies. Okay, so let's go over some of these decoding strategies. First, we have greedy decoding. Here it basically selects the token with the highest probability. So in this case, it will be this that the response will be that the sky was full of stars, because stars has the highest probability. So then you also have the second strategy, that is the random sampling, in which it will randomly select any token from the distribution irrespective of the probability. So it could select birds, it could select dust, not necessarily dust because it has the lowest or anything, but randomly, right? So that's a random sampling. Then you also have the top k approach and the top p approach, right? So the top key approach, like what happens here is it will select some k tokens, okay, in terms of frequency, I'm saying. So some k tokens with the highest probability. So if k is equal to 2, it will select the top two, right? So that's stars and clouds in this case. And then you have the finally you have the top key approach, in which the model will select the smallest possible set of tokens whose cumulative probability is greater or equal to some value p, right? So here stars, clouds, and birds, if you add their probabilities up, right, so you can see that the sum is equal to 0.75. So it is, so that is why it will return these particular tokens. And also it is the smallest possible set that comes up to this greater than or equal to 0.75. So these were the decoding strategies that are employed. There are many more. Sometimes these are used in combination, right? So, but there's also another important, parameter that I mentioned before. So this is known as temperature. You may have come across this while using ChatGPT's API, or using online tools like Scribe, Dolly, Midjourney, then Leonardo AI, and I think some of you guys have also mentioned before, right? So this is temperature, or also you can also call it entropy. These these online tools like to call them, especially tools like Midjourney, Leonardo dot AI. These tools would like to call it, magic, increase the amount of magic or creativity, things like that. But the technical term here is temperature. So what is temperature? It's basically a number which is used to tune the degree of randomness, right? So a lower temperature means less randomness, and a higher temperature means more randomness. And its value varies between 0 and 1. So a temperature of 0 would mean, very deterministic in nature. So the responses will be, you know, uh, the responses will be kind of repeating itself, or obviously it's not definitely a downside. You have its advantages too. So for example, if you give it some question that you want to answer from some test, right, and you want the answer to be based on what you provide, from the context that you provide only, right, not any external context. So then maybe you can set a temperature to 0, and then you'll get a more correct answer, right? I said more correct answer, as in, no, I'm not saying it'll be it'll guarantee you a 100% accurate answer, but the answer will more likely to make sense. And then you have high temperature, which means more randomness. These are values that come close to 1. So this can, these are usually used when you want to get creative, when you want to, like, I mentioned before, creating a poem and so on. So things like this, you can use, you can set the alter the temperature, and then the model will respond in a more creative, or rather a more unusual way. And you may also see the model going off topic, or speaking something nonsensical, if the temperature is very high, right, if it's very close to 1. So you may have seen such a, parameter windows in online tools, but this is the one from Google. So Google has, it has its own generative AI studio. So this is picked up from there. Some of these are some of the parameters besides temperature. So you have token limit, which is basically the number of words that you want, okay, in the response. Then you have the top key, the top key for now you can see is selected, set to 40. You have top p. You have the maximum number of responses, the different kinds of, there is, when you be using the chat gpt, you must have seen regenerate button. So that is that, right? So these are the different parameters that you can alter and play around with, but temperature is definitely one of the most important ones. Okay, so so this here is a, a basic, a basic differentiation between the machine learning development, the traditional machine learning development, and the development with, using LLM. So it says here, see, needs 100%, need 1,000 plus training examples to get started, whereas LLM, it says need zero training examples, right? Note the asterisks that I've mentioned here, it's just to get started with the development, right? So second thing is like needs ML expertise in most, in some cases, right, in most cases. So but here you may not need that level of experience or expertise with machine learning when you use the LLM, right? Traditional development, we have some of us have experience that it requires a lot of compute time, and it also requires hardware resources, even if they are over the cloud, right? So here in LLM, you do not have to train the model, right? You're not training it for specific tasks, like we mentioned, translation, and then converting code from one language to another. So we do not have to train them as such. And then the traditional machine learning development focuses on minimizing something known as the loss function. Okay, so you will come to know more about the loss function in one of the activities under JCCF as well. So you can check it out, like what all it is, what all different terms are used there, right? But LLM does not focus upon more, minimizing the loss function. It completely thinks about the prompt design. So these are the basic differences between traditional ML dev and large language model dev. Okay, now let's have a look at the generative AI based offerings that Google has. So one thing that we need to understand is that the consumer requirements are very different from those of the enterprises. From the consumer's standpoint, we know that these tools help us boost productivity, right, on a regular basis, like from academics to creative arts and so on. But on the other hand, you have the organizations, the enterprises. They don't care, if the AI can write poems, or it can answer some questions based on some novels. All they want is that these tools to explain to them how the models arrive at conclusions based on the data, based on their data, right? Based on the data that these organizations provide, so that they can ensure that whatever decisions they are taking are strongly backed up by the data, right? So they want the explanation to the conclusions. If you look at the use cases here in this figure, you will notice stuff like fraud security, cost effectiveness, control over the data, right, accuracy, and so on. And in order to facilitate this, Google, what Google has done is it has divided the entire target audience. For the normal consumers, you have Bard, tools like Bard and MakerSuit. And for enterprises, you have Vertex AI, Duet AI, and there's an infinite list of tools out there. So before you understand what each individual tool does, you also need to keep in mind of this thing. Like, are you looking from a consumer standpoint? Are you asking for a task to be done from a organization or an enterprises or a business standpoint? So that is that. And yeah, so these are some of the Google's offerings. I've not gone much in depth to what each offering does and how it functions. You've got the activity to explain you all of that. There's also links to in the activity itself to other resources that you can learn from, which will give you a much better understanding of these things, right? So before we conclude, our session on Gen AI, there is, before we actually address this week's goals, I would like to address something else. So before we conclude this session, I like to get some more opinions from you guys. Opinions on this discussion that I have heard, and I'm sure some of you might have definitely heard that the job of a programmer will completely go away with AI tools. A lot of people have this opinion, or at least you may have seen these opinions being shared. What do you guys think? Do you think this statement is correct? It's incorrect? It's maybe partially correct or partially incorrect? What do you guys think? Okay, I have some responses here. It says change in the Nikhil, I think no, Vrishabh here says change in the jobs. Okay, change in the jobs. So I want to be a programmer anymore. Will I have to pick up some other, completely different, or you're saying change in the way the jobs are done, change in the way the work is done, or you're referring complete change in the career? It's partially correct. Okay, they will go, but only when the companies start creating robots that use AI and start coding like humans. Okay, right. They will. I doubt AI will be a tool for future tools. Some narratives was said for computers that they will replace humans. Okay, you've got a point there, Samarth. Partially correct. Okay, I'm assuming it's partially correct. New skills. Yes, this is something. Okay, new skills. With the current level of advancement for AI today, it's not exactly true. But in the future, it can be possible with further advancements. Yes. Okay, that's great. Okay. So, um, see, you would hear people normally saying things like, "Hey, I could just write I could just ask an AI to write a Python code to, let's say, call a Google API. So I don't really need a programmer for my business." Things like that. But then ask yourself, let's say you're working for 8 hours, okay, a day. Will you write code all the time? No, right? So, will you not discuss the design? Will you not brainstorm certain ideas, with your co-workers? Will you not talk to your customers on a regular basis in order to, maintain the growth of your business? Is AI going to do all of that? No, right? So, even if these tools get perfect with time, they will only automate a fraction of your work. Does that make sense? AI does accelerate, the pace of work, but it's our imperfections that make us unique. Because the beauty of human beings is basically it lies in their flaws. So yeah, your jobs wouldn't get replaced completely by AI, but then definitely you will have to adapt. You will have to make AI more inclusive in your work. So yeah, you know with that, we've covered everything for today. I know it was a short session because the pathway itself is short, but the labs are quite they are quite complex. If you We will be rolling out walkthroughs definitely for those, so you can always look up. And once again, these are the tasks, right, for this week. So you have to redeem the access code step by step. So last time for GCCF, there were some cases where the steps were not followed, in the right order. But then issues were resolved. But the Gen AI is a slightly, please be more careful with Gen AI, because first of all, we have these slots that are assigned to us. And if the slots get over and we, don't redeem them, then maybe we may or may not get a slot. And then basically even the GCCF pathway will not help you complete the entire program, right, for the goodies and other stuff and the certificates and all of that. So yeah, also check out, make sure you're part of the Discord channel, you're part of the study gems group that we have created on WhatsApp. Check out all the FAQs under the FAQ thread, okay, on the Discord cloud channel. They will help you with the tips and clarifications. Okay, if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat so I can answer them. Any questions related to the program from related to the GCCF pathway, anything you've encountered certain you've encountered certain glitches, you were not able to get the credits initially, or you were not able to avail the subscription. If you have any doubts and anything at all, then please do let us know in the chat. So far, guys, how is the progress going with the GCCF course? Are you able to complete activities, or are you facing a lot of technical issues? Okay, no issues. All right, then I am done, Kanchan. If you have anything to say, we can, or otherwise, we can wrap up today's session.
Yeah, I do have a few things to mention. So, guys, as we know that the most active channel for communication for the study champs is Discord. I have been putting announcements there, and as well as the FAQs, like kind of these are the problems that a lot of students face. So, to help troubleshoot, I have created them as FAQs and added them there. So, make sure you go through that in case you are running into problems and that the solution to it might be there. Also, please do stay consistent with the study champs. You will not be able to access all the labs in the end at the last minute. There are certain timeouts placed, so please do not leave it for the last minute. Make sure to redeem your access codes by 14th of October at least. You can continue doing your labs at a later point, but please do know that the swags, the milestones, and all are dependent on your submissions. So please stay consistent. Enjoy the labs as you do it. We are going to be sending in walkthroughs. If you have any other suggestions for us in how we can conduct these sessions to make it more effective for you all, please do let us know. So, yeah, that was it from my end. Thank you for joining in for today's session and hope you guys found it interesting and that you guys were able to learn more about Gen AI. Thank you, guys.